Hello, and welcome back to Boring History, your cozy corner for tales of history that are a little strange, a little wonderful, and perfect for drifting off to dreamland. Tonight, we're going on a journey, not to faraway lands, but deep into the human heart. Because, let's be honest, we humans are a pretty vain and sometimes utterly desperate bunch, aren't we? Just think about it. You probably woke up today, looked in the mirror, and maybe thought about that new face cream you saw advertised, or perhaps that trendy detox tea your friend swears by. You might have even scrolled past an ad for some cutting-edge anti-aging serum promising to rewind time, or a supplement guaranteeing boundless energy. We're constantly bombarded with ways to look better, feel younger, live longer, and generally just be a more perfect version of ourselves. Now, here's the kicker. This isn't some new, modern obsession. Not by a long shot. Swap out that fancy anti-aging cream for a face mask made of crocodile dung, and that detox tea for a good old-fashioned bloodletting, and suddenly you're right there with our ancestors. Because for thousands upon thousands of years, humans have been utterly fascinated, sometimes even consumed, by the quest for beauty, the desire for robust health, and the desperate hope of cheating time and sickness. It's a truly universal human experience. From the sun-baked banks of the Nile, where pharaohs slathered themselves in exotic oils, to the grand marble baths of Rome, where senators fretted over their receding hairlines. From ancient Chinese courts, where empresses prized porcelain white skin, to the dense jungles of Mesoamerica, where people reshaped their very skulls for status. Every corner of the ancient world has its own wild, wonderful, and sometimes truly weird stories about how people tried to look good, feel good, and avoid kicking the bucket too soon. And trust me, some of these stories are going to make your eyebrows hit your hairline. We're talking about beauty rituals that involve things you definitely wouldn't want in your bathroom cabinet today, unless you're into things like fermented placenta or ground-up mouse brains. And as for medicine, well, let's just say ancient doctors had a very hands-on approach, often involving leeches, drills, and a healthy dose of hopeful chanting. It's a journey that blurs the lines between science and superstition, between genuine medical insight and outright magical thinking. Sometimes they stumbled onto something surprisingly effective. Other times, their treatments were probably worse than the illness itself. But always, there was this relentless human drive, this deep-seated wish to defy nature, to perfect the imperfect, and to find a cure for everything from a pesky wrinkle to a life-threatening plague. Imagine, if you will, the bustling markets of ancient Egypt. Can you hear the chatter, smell the spices, and catch a whiff of exotic perfumes being traded? Picture a woman carefully applying kohl to her eyes, not just to look beautiful, but because she believes it connects her to the gods, offering protection from the harsh desert sun and even evil spirits. Then, fast forward to a Greek physician, meticulously observing his patients, trying to understand the body's balance of humors, those mysterious fluids like blood and black bile, convinced that an imbalance was the root of all sickness. He might prescribe a special diet, some exercise, or even, yes, a good old draining of some blood to bring things back into whack. Or perhaps visualize a skilled Roman surgeon on a battlefield, armed with gleaming bronze tools, attempting to mend a broken bone or extract an arrow, while elsewhere in Rome, a wealthy matron is preparing for her bath, a complex ritual involving perfumed oils, pumice stones, and perhaps a depilatory cream made from rather unsavory ingredients. It's all part of this incredible tapestry of human ingenuity, vanity, and sheer will to survive and thrive. We'll explore not just the methods, but the why behind them. What did beauty mean to a person living 3,000 years ago? What did they understand about health and disease? And what desperate measures were they willing to take when faced with suffering? So, snuggle in, dim the lights, and let your mind wander. We're about to peel back the layers of history, uncovering the strange, the sublime, and the sometimes truly stomach-churning secrets of ancient beauty and bizarre medical treatments. We'll hear the whispers of ancient peoples who, despite all their differences, shared the same fundamental hopes and fears as us. It's a story about them, but in many ways, it's also a story about us. Because the desire to be beautiful, healthy, and a little bit immortal, that's something truly timeless. Imagine a land of blinding sun, golden sands, and the shimmering, life-giving ribbon of the Nile. This is ancient Egypt, a civilization utterly obsessed with beauty, hygiene, and looking absolutely fabulous, even in the afterlife. Seriously, if there was a red carpet in the ancient world, it would have been unrolled in front of a pyramid, and the Egyptians would have slayed. These weren't people who just rolled out of bed and hoped for the best. Oh no, for the Egyptians, looking good wasn't just about vanity. It was deeply spiritual, connected to their gods, their health, and their very concept of cosmic order. Cleanliness was next to godliness, and looking divine meant you were a step closer to, well, being divine. Let's start with arguably their most famous beauty statement: the eyes. We've all seen pictures of pharaohs and queens with those dramatic, almond-shaped eyes outlined in dark kohl. It's iconic, but it wasn't just for show. Kohl, often made from ground galena, a lead, and sometimes malachite, served a few super practical purposes. First, it reduced sun glare, which, if you've ever been under a desert sun, you'll know is a huge relief. Think of it as ancient sunglasses, but way cooler. Second, it was believed to ward off evil spirits and protect against eye infections. The lead in the kohl actually had mild antibacterial properties. So, these ancient trendsetters were accidentally onto something. They used little applicators, often thin sticks, to draw those precise lines, extending them outwards in a cat-eye flick that would still be considered stylish today. Men, women, and even children wore kohl. It was for everyone who wanted to look good and keep their peepers healthy. But their eye makeup didn't stop at kohl. They also used green malachite eyeshadow for a pop of color, making their eyes even more striking. Imagine the vibrant greens against the dark kohl. It must have been quite a sight. It makes you wonder if they ever had makeup accidents, like smudged kohl right before a big royal procession. Probably. They were human, after all. Now, let's move beyond the eyes to the rest of the face. Skincare was a huge deal. The desert climate could be harsh, so keeping skin moisturized and protected was essential. The Egyptians had a serious love affair with oils: castor oil, morina oil, sesame oil, you name it. They used these to protect their skin from the sun and wind, to keep it supple, and to ward off wrinkles. Think of them as the original advocates for moisturize, moisturize, moisturize. And what about the legendary Cleopatra? She wasn't just known for her political savvy and charm. Her beauty rituals were famous. She reportedly bathed in ass's milk, believing its lactic acid gently exfoliated and softened her skin. Whether that's entirely true or just a great PR story for a queen, it certainly paints a luxurious picture. Honey, a natural humectant and antiseptic, was also a popular ingredient in face masks, often mixed with ground alabaster for a gentle scrub. Hair was another area where the Egyptians excelled. Both men and women often shaved their heads, not because they were bald, but for hygiene and comfort in the hot climate. Then came the wigs. Oh, the wigs. These weren't just simple hairpieces. They were elaborate, intricately styled creations made from human hair, plant fibers, or even wool. They were often scented with perfumed cones placed on top, which would slowly melt throughout the day, releasing fragrant oils. Talk about a walking air freshener. Wigs were a sign of status, wealth, and elegance. They could be short and practical or long and cascading, often adorned with braids, beads, and gold ornaments. Imagine the wig makers of ancient Egypt meticulously crafting these masterpieces. And for those who kept their natural hair, henna was used to dye it, adding reddish-brown hues, which was especially popular for covering up grays, because even ancient Egyptians weren't immune to the horror of discovering that first silver strand. And what about smelling good? Absolutely essential. The Egyptians were masters of perfumery. They created fragrant oils by steeping plants like lilies, myrrh, frankincense, and cinnamon in fatty oils. Their most famous perfume was probably kifi, a complex incense made from a blend of resins, berries, and spices, burned for its calming aroma and spiritual significance. They'd rub perfumed oils into their skin, wear scented cones, and even place fragrant sachets in their clothing. Nobody wanted to smell like a dusty tomb. They wanted to smell like a flower garden after a rain shower. Even fingernails and toenails got the beauty treatment. Henna wasn't just for hair. It was used to stain nails a reddish-orange hue. It was not only decorative but also a sign of cleanliness and good health. So, when we look back at ancient Egypt, we see a society that truly embraced beauty as an art form and a way of life. It wasn't just about looking pretty. It was about embodying an ideal of perfection, health, and divinity. Their rituals, from the dramatic kohl to the elaborate wigs and perfumed oils, reveal a deep understanding of aesthetics and an incredible ingenuity in using natural resources. They set a very high bar for looking good, a bar many of us still try to reach today, just maybe with less crocodile dung involved. So, we've learned that the ancient Egyptians were total pros at looking good. But what about when things went wrong? When that flawless skin developed a rash, or a royal tooth started aching? Well, their approach to medicine was just as fascinating, and sometimes just as wild, as their beauty routines. For a long time, historians thought ancient Egyptian medicine was mostly spells and mumbo-jumbo. And sure, there was definitely a spiritual side to it. Many illnesses were seen as punishments from the gods or the work of evil spirits. You'd pray to Sekhmet, the goddess of healing and destruction, or Thoth, the god of wisdom. Amulets were worn for protection, and charms were recited. But beneath all that spiritual layering was a surprising amount of genuine, practical medical knowledge. One of the most mind-blowing discoveries about Egyptian medicine is something called the Edwin Smith Papyrus. It's an ancient medical text, probably written around 1600 BCE, but it's thought to be a copy of even older writings, maybe from as far back as 3000 BCE. This papyrus is basically an ancient medical textbook, and it's incredible. It describes 48 different injuries, from head wounds to broken bones, in a super systematic way. For each injury, it goes like this. First, a description of the ailment. Second, a diagnosis like an ailment not to be treated if it was too severe, or an ailment I will contend with if they thought they could help. And third, a treatment. Is shockingly rational. It talks about observing the patient, feeling for pulses, listening to symptoms very similar to how a doctor might start today. It even mentions examining breath and urine. These weren't just witch doctors. They were actual observers and thinkers. Now, let's talk about something the Egyptians were masters of, though perhaps not intentionally for medical advancement: mummification. Yes, turning dead bodies into long-lasting works of art provided an incredible, if gruesome, anatomy lesson. Priests and embalmers over thousands of years got really good at knowing what was inside the human body, even if their understanding of its function wasn't quite modern. They knew where the organs were, how they connected, and what they looked like. This hands-on experience, while for the deceased, probably gave their doctors a leg up in knowing their way around the living. But their treatments could be eccentric, to say the least. Remember the crocodile dung? Yeah, it pops up again, this time as a contraceptive. They believed a pessary made of crocodile dung, mixed with honey and sodium carbonate, could prevent pregnancy. We're not sure how effective it was, but it certainly sounds like a memorable experience, for all the wrong reasons. However, they also stumbled upon some surprisingly effective remedies. Honey, for instance, was a medical superstar. They used it to treat wounds and infections. And guess what? Honey is a natural antiseptic and has antibacterial properties. So, when they dabbed honey on a cut, they were actually doing something genuinely helpful. They might not have known why it worked, but they knew that it worked. And speaking of accidental discoveries, moldy bread was sometimes applied to wounds. Sound gross? Maybe. But molds, as we now know, are where penicillin comes from. So, way before Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin in the 20th century, ancient Egyptians might have been inadvertently using an early form of antibiotics. Talk about a happy accident. Dental issues were a big problem. Their diet, often gritty from stone-ground flour, wore down teeth, leading to cavities and abscesses. Evidence suggests they tried to treat these. We found skulls with drilled teeth, possibly to drain infections. And there's some evidence of rudimentary fillings or even early attempts at bridging missing teeth. Imagine being in an ancient Egyptian dentist's chair. Probably not a spa day. Surgery, though limited compared to later eras, was also practiced. The Edwin Smith Papyrus describes treating fractures, dislocated jaws, and even performing basic cranial surgery for head injuries. They had a range of surgical instruments, knives, saws, forceps, made of copper and bronze. Sanitation, as we understand it today, was non-existent, so infections after surgery would have been a massive risk. It took serious courage, or perhaps desperation, to go under the ancient Egyptian knife. So, while they had their gods and their spells, the ancient Egyptians also had a very keen sense of observation and a desire to understand and treat the human body. They blended their beliefs with practical knowledge, creating a medical system that was both mystical and surprisingly pragmatic. They might not have worn white coats or used sterile gloves, but their efforts laid some early groundwork for the long, winding road of medical history, reminding us that even the strangest treatments often came from a place of wanting to ease suffering and prolong life. All right, let's pack our bags, or rather, our imaginary time-traveling sandals, and head east from the sands of Egypt to the fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This is Mesopotamia, a place often called the cradle of civilization. We're talking Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, Assyrians, cultures that gave us writing, the wheel, and some seriously interesting ideas about beauty and medicine. Life here was often tough, subject to floods and invasions, but the people of Mesopotamia were incredibly innovative. And just like their Egyptian neighbors, they definitely cared about looking good and staying healthy. When it came to beauty, the Mesopotamians were all about showing off. Their societies were often structured, with kings, priests, and powerful families at the top. And what better way to show you're important than to adorn yourself? Early cosmetics were definitely a thing. We find evidence of ground minerals like lead, antimony, and copper used to create eye paints and pigments. Think bold, strong lines, probably similar to kohl, framing the eyes to make them stand out. They also used crushed gemstones for shimmer, which sounds incredibly luxurious, right? Imagine tiny flecks of lapis lazuli sparkling around your eyes. And perfumes? Absolutely. They used scented oils and resins, likely to mask body odors, because ancient times weren't exactly known for their deodorant, but also for religious ceremonies and just to smell pleasant. The scent of cedarwood, myrrh, and cypress would have been common. Hair was a big deal, especially for men. The Assyrian kings, in particular, are famous for their incredibly elaborate beards and hairstyles. We're talking intricate curls, often braided and adorned with ribbons and gold dust. Maintaining those must have been a full-time job for someone. Women also wore their hair long, often braided and piled high, sometimes enhanced with hairpieces, much like the Egyptians. And again, status played a huge role. The more elaborate your look, the more important you probably were. Now, let's pivot to medicine, which in Mesopotamia was a truly fascinating blend of the practical and the profoundly spiritual. For these folks, illness wasn't just a random bad luck occurrence. Oh no, it was often seen as a punishment from the gods, or even worse, the work of angry demons. So, doctors weren't just healers, they were also a bit like spiritual detectives. The Code of Hammurabi, one of the oldest and most complete legal codes from ancient Babylon, even mentions doctors and their fees and their punishments. For example, if a doctor performed a successful eye operation on a rich person, they got a good fee. But if the patient lost their eye because of the operation, the doctor's hands might be cut off. Talk about high stakes, no pressure ancient doctors. Mesopotamian healers, often called ashipu, exorcists/diviners, and asu, physicians/herbalists, had different roles. The ashipu focused on diagnosing the spiritual cause of the illness. Which god did you offend? What demon is clinging to you? They'd use incantations, spells, and even elaborate rituals like liver omens, examining animal livers for signs, to figure out the problem. The ASU, on the other hand, was more practical. They used a vast array of herbal remedies. They had an impressive knowledge of plants and their medicinal properties. Everything from poppy for pain relief, a very early form of opium, to licorice, thyme, and mustard was used. They also used mineral remedies and animal products. But even with the practical stuff, the strange treatments pop up. For a headache, for example, they might apply a poultice of powdered swallow's dung to the head. Or, to cure a toothache, they might burn certain plants and have the patient inhale the smoke, believing it would drive out the toothworm that caused the pain. Spoiler alert, there's no toothworm, but the smoke might have offered some temporary relief from the pain. Surgery was rudimentary and dangerous, often performed by what we might call barber surgeons. They could set broken bones, drain abscesses, and treat wounds, especially those sustained in battle. But again, without any understanding of germs or hygiene, infection was a constant, deadly threat. One interesting aspect was public health. The Mesopotamians, especially the Babylonians, were excellent engineers. They built impressive irrigation systems and sophisticated sewage networks, which, by reducing contaminated water, probably helped prevent the spread of some diseases, even if they didn't understand the germ theory of disease. So, while their individual treatments could be a bit hit or miss, their infrastructure sometimes provided a broader layer of public well-being. Ultimately, Mesopotamian medicine was a tightrope walk between faith and observation. They believed in the power of their gods and the malevolence of demons, but they also meticulously cataloged symptoms, experimented with herbal remedies, and even performed basic surgical procedures. It was a world where you might get a powerful herbal draft from a physician, while simultaneously wearing an amulet and chanting a prayer to ward off the sickness demon. A true testament to humanity's early and often confusing attempts to understand and control the mysteries of the body. All right, our historical journey now takes us across the Mediterranean Sea, away from the empires of the East and into the sun-drenched landscapes of ancient Greece. This is the land of philosophers, democracy, epic poems, and the Olympic Games. And when it came to beauty, the Greeks had a very specific and rather high ideal. Unlike the Egyptians who went all out with dramatic makeup, or the Mesopotamians with their elaborate beards, the ancient Greeks, at least in their classical period, leaned more towards a philosophy of natural beauty, balance, and harmony. For them, true beauty wasn't just about how you looked. It was deeply connected to your moral character, your intelligence, and your physical fitness. They had a concept called kalokagathia, which basically meant being both beautiful, kalos, and good, agathos. A perfect citizen was beautiful on the outside and virtuous on the inside. No pressure, right? This meant that the ideal Greek physique was something to aspire to. Think of those statues of athletes you see in museums, strong, toned, symmetrical, but not overly muscular. Exercise was a huge part of daily life for men, from the gymnasium to the wrestling arena. A healthy, well-exercised body was seen as a reflection of a healthy, disciplined mind. So, if you wanted to be considered truly beautiful, you better hit the ancient gym. When it came to skincare, it was all about keeping things clean and glowing naturally. Olive oil was their go-to beauty secret. They'd use it not just for cooking, but to cleanse their skin, moisturize it, and protect it from the sun. After exercising, they'd apply olive oil, then scrape it off with a strigil, a curved metal tool, to remove dirt, sweat, and dead skin. It was their ancient version of exfoliating and moisturizing all in one, and probably felt pretty good after a hard workout. Makeup, as we understand it today, was used much more subtly than in Egypt. If a woman wore too much obvious makeup, she might be viewed with a bit of suspicion, as it could suggest she was trying to hide something, or worse, that she was a bit loose. The ideal was a pale complexion, sometimes achieved by using white lead powder, which, as we'll learn, was a terrible idea for your health. They'd use red ochre or berry juices for a touch of color on the lips and cheeks, but very, very lightly. They weren't afraid of a little enhancement, though. Eyebrows were a specific point of interest. A unibrow was actually considered a sign of beauty and intelligence. If you weren't naturally blessed with one, you might draw it on with a bit of dark soot or even attach false hair between your brows. So, while today some people might go to great lengths to separate their brows, the ancient Greeks were often striving for the exact opposite. Trends. Hair was also a big deal. For women, long, flowing hair was the ideal. They'd often wear it braided or tied up in intricate styles, sometimes adorned with ribbons, flowers, or delicate gold pins. Blonde hair was highly admired, and those not naturally blonde would try to achieve the look using natural dyes like saffron or even a concoction of lye and flower petals. Imagine sitting under the Greek sun, hoping your hair would lighten, probably smelling faintly of spices. For men, short, well-kept hair and beards were common, especially among philosophers and respected citizens. Beards were seen as a sign of wisdom and masculinity. However, during certain periods, like the Hellenistic era, clean-shaven faces became more fashionable, reflecting changing cultural influences. Public baths were also a central part of Greek life, not just for hygiene but for socializing and relaxation. Imagine stepping into a large, communal bathhouse, where you'd cleanse yourself, oil your skin, and chat with friends. It was a holistic approach to well-being, where physical care intertwined with social connection. So, while the Greeks might not have been painting their faces with elaborate designs like the Egyptians, their pursuit of beauty was no less intense. It was a more refined, philosophical kind of beauty, one that emphasized balance, health, and the harmony between the body and the mind. They valued a glowing complexion, strong physique, and graceful form, all wrapped up in the idea of what it meant to be a truly excellent human being. It reminds us that beauty standards change dramatically across cultures and time, but the underlying human desire to achieve an ideal remains constant. All right, our historical journey now takes us across the Mediterranean Sea, away from the empires of the East and into the sun-drenched landscapes of ancient Greece. This is the land of philosophers, democracy, epic poems, and the Olympic Games. And when it came to beauty, the Greeks had a very specific and rather high ideal. Unlike the Egyptians who went all out with dramatic makeup, or the Mesopotamians with their elaborate beards, the ancient Greeks, at least in their classical period, leaned more towards a philosophy of natural beauty, balance, and harmony. For them, true beauty wasn't just about how you looked. It was deeply connected to your moral character, your intelligence, and your physical fitness. They had a concept called kalokagathia, which basically meant being both beautiful, kalos, and good, agathos. A perfect citizen was beautiful on the outside and virtuous on the inside. No pressure, right? This meant that the ideal Greek physique was something to aspire to. Think of those statues of athletes you see in museums, strong, toned, symmetrical, but not overly muscular. Exercise was a huge part of daily life for men, from the gymnasium to the wrestling arena. A healthy, well-exercised body was seen as a reflection of a healthy, disciplined mind. So, if you wanted to be considered truly beautiful, you better hit the ancient gym. When it came to skincare, it was all about keeping things clean and glowing naturally. Olive oil was their go-to beauty secret. They'd use it not just for cooking, but to cleanse their skin, moisturize it, and protect it from the sun. After exercising, they'd apply olive oil, then scrape it off with a strigil, a curved metal tool, to remove dirt, sweat, and dead skin. It was their ancient version of exfoliating and moisturizing all in one, and probably felt pretty good after a hard workout. Makeup, as we understand it today, was used much more subtly than in Egypt. If a woman wore too much obvious makeup, she might be viewed with a bit of suspicion, as it could suggest she was trying to hide something, or worse, that she was a bit loose. The ideal was a pale complexion, sometimes achieved by using white lead powder, which, as we'll learn, was a terrible idea for your health. They'd use red ochre or berry juices for a touch of color on the lips and cheeks, but very, very lightly. They weren't afraid of a little enhancement, though. Eyebrows were a specific point of interest. A unibrow was actually considered a sign of beauty and intelligence. If you weren't naturally blessed with one, you might draw it on with a bit of dark soot or even attach false hair between your brows. So, while today some people might go to great lengths to separate their brows, the ancient Greeks were often striving for the exact opposite. Trends. Hair was also a big deal. For women, long, flowing hair was the ideal. They'd often wear it braided or tied up in intricate styles, sometimes adorned with ribbons, flowers, or delicate gold pins. Blonde hair was highly admired, and those not naturally blonde would try to achieve the look using natural dyes like saffron or even a concoction of lye and flower petals. Imagine sitting under the Greek sun, hoping your hair would lighten, probably smelling faintly of spices. For men, short, well-kept hair and beards were common, especially among philosophers and respected citizens. Beards were seen as a sign of wisdom and masculinity. However, during certain periods, like the Hellenistic era, clean-shaven faces became more fashionable, reflecting changing cultural influences. Public baths were also a central part of Greek life, not just for hygiene but for socializing and relaxation. Imagine stepping into a large, communal bathhouse where you'd cleanse yourself, oil your skin, and chat with friends. It was a holistic approach to well-being, where physical care intertwined with social connection. So, while the Greeks might not have been painting their faces with elaborate designs like the Egyptians, their pursuit of beauty was no less intense. It was a more refined, philosophical kind of beauty, one that emphasized balance, health, and the harmony between the body and the mind. They valued a glowing complexion, strong physique, and graceful form, all wrapped up in the idea of what it meant to be a truly excellent human being. It reminds us that beauty standards change dramatically across cultures and time, but the underlying human desire to achieve an ideal remains constant. Alright, so we've seen how the ancient Greeks admired the human form and strove for beauty that reflected an inner goodness. But what happened when that perfect form got sick? When the balanced humors went all out of whack? This is where ancient Greece truly shines, because it's arguably where medicine took a massive leap, moving away from pure superstition and towards something resembling scientific observation. Before the Greeks, illness was often seen as a divine punishment or the work of angry spirits. You made sacrifices, you chanted spells, you hoped for the best. And while those things didn't completely vanish in Greece, people still prayed to gods like Asclepius, the god of medicine, and sought healing in his temples. A huge shift began to occur. This was the birth of rational medicine. And the biggest name connected to this shift? Hippocrates, who lived around 460 to 370 BCE. You've probably heard of the Hippocratic Oath, which doctors still take today. Hippocrates is often called the father of Western medicine, and for good reason. His big idea was revolutionary. Illnesses were caused by natural factors, not by angry gods. Instead of curses, he looked for causes in diet, environment, and lifestyle. He and his followers believed in the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. These weren't actual liquids in the way we think of them, but more like fundamental essences in the body. The idea was that for a person to be healthy, these four humors had to be in perfect balance. If you had too much blood or too little yellow bile, you'd get sick. It was a neat, if ultimately incorrect, theory that would influence medicine for over 1,000 years. So, if you went to a Hippocratic doctor, they wouldn't just ask who offended Zeus. They'd ask about your diet, your sleep, your exercise, your environment. They'd observe your symptoms very carefully. The color of your urine, the texture of your stool, your breathing, your fever. They kept detailed records of cases, which was pretty advanced for the time. And how did they treat an imbalance of humors? Well, this is where some of the strange comes back in, though it made perfect sense to them. If you had too much blood, sanguine temperament apparently, you might be prone to fevers or inflammation. So the solution, bloodletting. They'd cut a vein or use leeches to literally drain some blood out, hoping to restore balance. It sounds horrifying to us and often weakened the patient, but it was done with the best intentions. If you had too much phlegm, phlegmatic temperament, they might induce purging or vomiting to get rid of the excess. Emetics, stuff to make you throw up, and laxatives were commonly prescribed. Again, not exactly pleasant, but designed to rebalance the body's internal fluids. Despite these somewhat brutal interventions, the Hippocratic school emphasized a much gentler approach first: diet, exercise, and rest. They believed that preventing illness was better than curing it. Eat healthy, get enough sleep, get some physical activity. Sounds familiar, right? They were miles ahead of their time in recognizing the power of lifestyle. Surgery, compared to later Roman advances, was generally limited. Greek doctors were cautious about invasive procedures because the risks of infection were so high. They focused more on setting broken bones, treating dislocations, and bandaging wounds. They had some tools, but nothing like the elaborate sets we'd see later. Even with this new, rational approach, the spiritual side of healing didn't disappear. People would still visit temples dedicated to Asclepius. These Asclepians were like ancient healing resorts. Patients would go there, sleep in sacred rooms called abita, and hope that Asclepius or his sacred snakes, which were kept in the temples, would appear to them in a dream and reveal a cure. It was a blend of faith healing, rest, and sometimes a little medical advice from the temple priests. So, ancient Greek medicine represents this incredible moment in history. It wasn't perfect, and some of their treatments sound absolutely baffling now. But their insistence on observing, documenting, and trying to find natural explanations for disease laid the essential groundwork for all future medical science. It was the first flickering flame of what would eventually become the scientific method in medicine, a truly transformative step in humanity's quest to understand and conquer illness. All right, from the thoughtful philosophers of Greece, we sail across the sea and into the grand, opulent, and sometimes wonderfully over-the-top world of the Roman Empire. This was a civilization of mighty emperors, vast armies, impressive engineering, and a serious commitment to looking good, sometimes at any cost. If the Greeks valued natural beauty and subtle enhancement, the Romans, especially the wealthy ones, weren't afraid to go bold. For them, beauty was often about displaying status, wealth, and power. The bigger the hairstyle, the whiter the skin, the more fragrant the perfume, the better. Let's dive right into what might be their most infamous beauty secret: their quest for a pale complexion. A fair skin tone was highly prized, signaling that you didn't have to work outside in the sun. And how did they achieve this coveted paleness? Often with white lead makeup. Yep, ground-up lead mixed into a cream. It gave a beautiful, smooth, ghostly white finish, but it was, as you can imagine, incredibly toxic. Long-term use led to lead poisoning, causing skin damage, hair loss, stomach problems, and even death. Talk about suffering for beauty. But they didn't stop there. For a rosy blush, they'd use cinnabar, which is a mercury sulfide. Again, highly toxic. So, the Roman ideal of beauty literally painted poison onto their faces. It makes you wonder what kind of health issues they just shrugged off, blaming them on bad humors or a god's wrath, when it was probably their makeup killing them slowly. Beyond the face, Roman hairstyles were truly a sight to behold, especially for women of high status. We're talking about elaborate, towering constructions of curls, braids, and loops, often held up by frames, pins, and hairnets. These styles could be so complex they'd take hours to create, sometimes requiring the help of enslaved hairdressers called ornatrices. Wigs and hairpieces were incredibly common to achieve these voluminous looks. Imagine trying to sleep with a skyscraper on your head. They also experimented with hair dyes. Blonde hair was sometimes desired, and concoctions involving goat's fat and beechwood ash were used to lighten hair. For darker hair, a mixture of lead and vinegar was applied, which, you guessed it, contained more toxic lead. And let's not forget the Roman obsession with cleanliness and fragrance. The public baths were central to Roman life, not just for getting clean, but for socializing, exercising, and even doing business. These massive complexes had cold rooms, warm rooms, hot rooms, swimming pools, and facilities for massages and beauty treatments. It was basically an ancient spa and community center rolled into one. Within these baths or at home, Romans used a variety of skincare products. They loved scented oils made from olives, almonds, and flowers like roses and lilies. They'd apply these to moisturize, perfume, and massage their bodies. Face masks were popular too, made from ingredients like barley flour, eggs, honey, and even placid. Don't worry, not that kind of placid. For unwanted hair, depilatories were used, often made from resin, beeswax, or even somewhat bizarre ingredients like pigeon droppings mixed with vinegar. Shaving with bronze razors was also common, but not always the most comfortable experience. Dental care was also a concern. They cleaned their teeth with powders made from ground pumice, chalk, or even urine, specifically Portuguese urine, which was thought to be particularly potent due to its ammonia content. Yes, you heard that right. Ancient mouthwash. They also tried to whiten teeth and even used gold wires to hold loose teeth in place, a very early form of dental bridgework. Perfumes were a massive industry in Rome. Wealthy Romans would douse themselves in imported scents, use perfumed oils after baths, and even scent their homes. The more exotic the ingredients, the better. Myrrh, frankincense, cinnamon, spikenard, these precious aromas wafted through the villas of the elite. So, The Roman Empire was a place of astonishing luxury and an unbridled pursuit of external perfection. While some of their beauty choices were incredibly toxic by modern standards, they highlight a society that valued appearance, social status, and personal indulgence. They certainly left a legacy of grandiosity, both in their architecture and in their elaborate, sometimes dangerous beauty regimens. It goes to show that the desire to look good can sometimes override common sense, even for the most pragmatic of empires. From the elaborate wigs and lead-laced makeup, we now turn our attention to the Roman Empire's medical world. And just like everything else in Rome, their approach to health and healing was grand, practical, and sometimes startlingly advanced for its time, though still spiced with some truly bizarre remedies. The Romans were pragmatists. They were builders, engineers, and conquerors. So, it makes sense that their medicine would reflect this. They didn't really innovate new theories like the Greeks did with the four humors. Instead, they took Greek medical knowledge, added their own practical skills, and scaled it up for a massive empire. One of the most important figures in Roman medicine, whose influence would last for over 1,000 years in the West, was Galen of Pergamon. He was a Greek physician who eventually settled in Rome, becoming the personal doctor to emperors. Galen was a powerhouse of medical knowledge. He devoured previous texts, conducted detailed anatomical studies, mostly on animals, because human dissection was generally forbidden, and performed experiments. Galen expanded on the Hippocratic theory of the four humors, making it even more detailed. He believed disease resulted from an imbalance, and treatment involved restoring that balance. His writings became the ultimate authority, so much so that for centuries after him, challenging Galen was almost unthinkable. He even worked as a gladiator's doctor for a while, which gave him incredible hands-on experience with wounds, fractures, and trauma. Essentially, a crash course in ancient emergency medicine. Imagine patching up a gladiator after a fight. That's some serious pressure. Roman military medicine was particularly impressive. With an empire constantly at war, keeping soldiers healthy was crucial. Roman legions had dedicated medical staff, field hospitals, and even special surgical tools designed for battlefield injuries. They understood the importance of clean water and basic hygiene to prevent disease among the troops. Their instruments, made of bronze and iron, were surprisingly sophisticated. Scalpels, forceps, bone drills, catheters. Some look eerily similar to modern tools. Beyond the military, Rome also saw significant advances in public health. Remember those incredible aqueducts that brought fresh water into the cities? And the extensive sewer systems like the Cloaca Maxima? These weren't just engineering marvels. They were massive public health initiatives. By providing clean water and removing waste, the Romans dramatically improved sanitation in their cities, which undoubtedly saved countless lives from waterborne diseases. They might not have known why it worked. They still believed in miasma or bad air causing disease, but they knew that it worked. But even with Galen's brilliance and Roman pragmatism, some of their remedies were still pretty strange and sometimes dangerous. Take theriac, for example. This was an ancient panacea, a supposed cure-all for everything from poisons to plagues. It was an incredibly complex concoction, sometimes containing dozens or even hundreds of ingredients, including viper's flesh, opium, honey, and exotic spices. It was brewed for years, incredibly expensive, and probably not very effective for most things, though the opium certainly offered pain relief. Another one that will make you squirm: gladiator's blood. For a while, it was believed that drinking the blood of a freshly killed gladiator could cure epilepsy. Imagine the scene. A gladiator falls in the arena, and immediately, people rush forward with cups, hoping to catch some blood for a cure. It highlights the desperation of people facing incurable diseases and their belief in sympathetic magic. And we already mentioned the urine for teeth whitening, but it also pops up in other remedies. Animal parts were also used, like lizard livers for certain ailments or wolf's teeth for teething babies. The line between rational medicine, folk remedy, and outright superstition was still very much blurred. Herbal medicine continued to be a cornerstone. Romans extensively cultivated and imported herbs for their medicinal properties. Pliny the Elder, a famous Roman scholar, documented hundreds of plants and their uses in his massive work, natural history. They used things like chamomile for relaxation, mint for digestion, and garlic for infections, many of which we still recognize today for their benefits. So, Roman medicine was a powerhouse of practical application, building upon Greek theories and creating a sophisticated system for a vast empire. From the careful observations of Galen to the impressive public health works, they laid down much of the framework for later Western medicine. Yet, in their quest to conquer disease, they also left us with a legacy of bizarre and sometimes horrifying treatments, reminding us that even the most advanced ancient civilizations were still learning, one strange remedy at a time. Let's now journey far to the east, to a land of ancient dynasties, philosophical wisdom, and breathtaking beauty standards that sometimes involved incredible pain. We're talking about ancient China, a civilization with a rich history of artistry, innovation, and a profound connection between inner harmony and outer appearance. For the ancient Chinese, beauty wasn't just about looking good. It was often tied to concepts of spiritual purity, social status, and the balance of qi, the vital life force. The ideal of beauty shifted across dynasties, but some themes remained constant for centuries. Perhaps the most enduring, and for us, striking beauty ideal was skin whitening. A pale complexion was the ultimate sign of beauty and refinement, suggesting that a woman or man didn't have to toil in the sun like a peasant. It denoted nobility and leisure. This wasn't just a preference, it was an obsession. To achieve this milky white skin, women would apply powders made from ground rice. This was a relatively safe and natural way to lighten the complexion. However, like the Romans, they also used less savory methods, sometimes resorting to lead-based white paints, which, as we know, came with serious health risks. Imagine applying poison to your face every day just to look a certain way. It truly shows the power of societal pressure. But if there's one ancient Chinese beauty ritual that truly stands out for its extreme nature, it has to be foot binding. This practice, which began around the 10th century and lasted for nearly 1,000 years, involved breaking and tightly binding the feet of young girls, usually between the ages of 4 and 9. The goal was to create tiny, 3-inch-long lotus feet. The process was excruciatingly painful and irreversible. The toes would be bent under the sole, and the arch was slowly broken, creating a deeply deformed foot. Why? Because tiny feet were considered incredibly erotic and a supreme mark of beauty, refinement, and marriageability. A woman with bound feet was seen as delicate, aristocratic, and desirable. It was a profound symbol of female beauty and status, even though it meant lifelong disability and constant pain. It's a stark, almost horrifying example of how far cultural beauty standards can push people. Let's now journey far to the east, to a land of ancient dynasties, philosophical wisdom, and breathtaking beauty standards that sometimes involved incredible pain. We're talking about ancient China, a civilization with a rich history of artistry, innovation, and a profound connection between inner harmony and outer appearance. For the ancient Chinese, beauty wasn't just about looking good. It was often tied to concepts of spiritual purity, social status, and the balance of qi, the vital life force. The ideal of beauty shifted across dynasties, but some themes remained constant for centuries. Perhaps the most enduring, and for us, striking beauty ideal was skin whitening. A pale complexion was the ultimate sign of beauty and refinement, suggesting that a woman or man didn't have to toil in the sun like a peasant. It denoted nobility and leisure. This wasn't just a preference, it was an obsession. To achieve this milky white skin, women would apply powders made from ground rice. This was a relatively safe and natural way to lighten the complexion. However, like the Romans, they also used less savory methods, sometimes resorting to lead-based white paints, which, as we know, came with serious health risks. Imagine applying poison to your face every day just to look a certain way. It truly shows the power of societal pressure. But if there's one ancient Chinese beauty ritual that truly stands out for its extreme nature, it has to be foot binding. This practice, which began around the 10th century and lasted for nearly 1,000 years, involved breaking and tightly binding the feet of young girls, usually between the ages of 4 and 9. The goal was to create tiny, 3-inch-long lotus feet. The process was excruciatingly painful and irreversible. The toes would be bent under the sole, and the arch was slowly broken, creating a deeply deformed foot. Why? Because tiny feet were considered incredibly erotic and a supreme mark of beauty, refinement, and marriageability. A woman with bound feet was seen as delicate, aristocratic, and desirable. It was a profound symbol of female beauty and status, even though it meant lifelong disability and constant pain. It's a stark, almost horrifying example of how far cultural beauty standards can push people. Hair, too, played a huge role. Long, lustrous black hair was a symbol of youth and vitality. Women would spend hours on elaborate coiffures, often piling their hair high with intricate braids, twists, and rolls. These styles were often adorned with incredibly beautiful hairpins made of jade, gold, silver, or carved wood, sometimes featuring delicate flowers, birds, or mythological creatures. It was hair as a work of art. And much like in Egypt, hair dyes were used. Natural plant extracts helped maintain the dark sheen, and henna was sometimes used for nails, giving them a reddish tint, a sign of refinement. The lips and cheeks also received attention. Women would use natural plant dyes from flowers like safflower to create subtle blushes and lip colors. Sometimes, powdered pearl was added to these preparations, believed to give the skin a luminous glow and even offer health benefits. Pearl powder is still used in some modern skincare today, actually. Beyond the face and hair, the hands were often admired, and long, well-manicured fingernails were another sign of status, showing that one didn't engage in manual labor. Sometimes, these nails were protected by elaborate gold or jade nail guards, which also served as stunning decorative pieces. Even imperial figures had their own legendary beauty secrets. Take Empress Dowager Cixi, a powerful figure in the late Qing dynasty. She was known for her obsession with maintaining her youthful appearance. Her regimen included daily use of jade rollers to massage her face, believed to improve circulation and reduce wrinkles. She also famously used pearl powder not just on her skin, but also consumed it internally, hoping for both beauty and longevity. Some ancient Chinese texts even describe beauty practices involving fermented rice water for hair and skin, a practice that has seen a resurgence in modern beauty trends. So, in ancient China, beauty was a complex tapestry woven with threads of philosophy, social hierarchy, and sometimes unimaginable sacrifice. From the pristine paleness of the skin to the intricate architecture of hair, and the shocking practice of foot binding, these rituals reveal a deep cultural emphasis on aesthetic perfection. It reminds us that beauty standards are powerful forces, shaping lives and bodies in ways that can be both exquisite and profoundly challenging. All right, we've marveled at the elaborate beauty rituals of ancient China. Some beautiful, some truly shocking. Now, let's explore how this ancient civilization approached the challenge of sickness and healing. Much like their views on beauty, ancient Chinese medicine is rooted in deep philosophical principles, focusing on harmony, balance, and the flow of vital energy. The cornerstone of ancient Chinese medicine, which is still widely practiced today, is traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM. Unlike the Western focus on anatomy and specific organs, TCM looks at the body as a miniature universe, interconnected and influenced by the world around it. The main idea is qi, pronounced qi, which is the vital life force or energy that flows through everything, including our bodies. When your qi is flowing smoothly and your body is in balance, you're healthy. But if your qi gets blocked, or if there's an imbalance between the opposing forces of yin and yang, think hot/cold, dark/light, passive/active, that's when you get sick. It's a bit like having a plumbing problem. If the pipes are blocked, things don't work right. So, how did ancient Chinese doctors unblock that qi or restore balance? Their most famous technique, and one that has gained incredible popularity worldwide, is acupuncture. You've probably seen pictures or maybe even tried it yourself. Acupuncture involves inserting super thin needles into specific points on the body, called acupuncture points, which lie along invisible energy pathways called meridians. The idea is that stimulating these points unblocks the qi, restores balance, and allows the body to heal itself. Acupuncture wasn't just for pain relief, though it was certainly used for that. It was used for a vast array of conditions, from digestive problems to headaches, infertility, and even emotional imbalances. The earliest documented use of acupuncture goes back thousands of years, evolving from sharper stone tools to the fine metal needles used later. It's a testament to long-term observation and experimentation. But TCM is much more than just needles. Herbal medicine is another huge pillar. The ancient Chinese developed an incredibly vast pharmacopoeia, a library of medicinal plants, minerals, and even some animal parts. They believed different herbs had different properties. Some were warming, some cooling, some stimulated qi, others calmed it. These herbs were rarely used alone. Instead, complex formulas were created, often with many ingredients, tailored specifically to the patient's unique imbalance. Imagine an ancient Chinese pharmacy, rows and rows of dried herbs, roots, barks, and fungi, each with a specific purpose. There's ginseng for energy, ginger for digestion, goji berries for vitality, and countless others. Some of these ingredients, like certain animal parts, rhinoceros horn, tiger bones, are now controversial and often illegal due to ethical and conservation concerns, but they were used extensively in ancient times. Beyond acupuncture and herbs, other techniques were used. Moxibustion involves burning dried mugwort near acupuncture points to warm them and stimulate qi flow. You might have noticed a distinct herbal smell if you've been near a TCM clinic using moxibustion. Another technique is cupping, where heated glass cups are placed on the skin, creating suction. This was believed to draw out toxins and improve blood flow. It often leaves those distinctive circular marks on the skin, which can look a bit alarming if you're not expecting them. Diagnosis in TCM was an intricate art. Doctors would spend a lot of time observing the patient, their complexion, their tongue, its color, coating, shape, and especially their pulse. Pulse diagnosis in TCM is incredibly detailed, with doctors feeling for different qualities of the pulse at various positions on the wrist, believing each reflected the state of different organs and qi flow. It wasn't just about how fast your heart was beating. It was about the depth, strength, and rhythm. Now, when it came to surgery, ancient China had a different path compared to the Romans or Greeks. Due to Confucian beliefs about the integrity of the body, that it should be returned to the earth as whole as possible, extensive dissection and invasive surgery were generally less common. However, some early forms of surgery did exist, particularly for emergencies or superficial issues. There are legends of skilled surgeons like Hua Tuo around 2nd century CE, who supposedly used anesthesia during complex operations, though solid historical evidence for this is sometimes debated. So, ancient Chinese medicine offers a unique and holistic perspective on health. It's a system built on harmony, observation, and a profound understanding of the interconnectedness of the body and mind. While some of its practices might seem unusual to a Western mind, its enduring legacy and continued global appeal prove that these ancient insights into the flow of qi and the balance of yin and yang hold a powerful and lasting wisdom. Let's now turn our gaze to the incredible subcontinent of India, a land of ancient wisdom, vibrant traditions, and a holistic approach to life that has influenced countless generations. Here, beauty is not just skin deep. It's intimately connected to health, well-being, and a profound philosophical system called Ayurveda. Ayurveda, which means the science of life, is one of the world's oldest holistic healing systems, dating back thousands of years. It's not just about curing illness. It's about maintaining balance in the body, mind, and spirit to promote overall health and longevity. And naturally, this balance extends beautifully to how one approaches personal adornment and skincare. For ancient Indians, true beauty radiated from within, a reflection of good health and spiritual harmony. One of the most iconic, and perhaps universally loved, ingredients in Indian beauty and medicine is turmeric. You probably know it as a spice that gives curry its vibrant yellow color. But in ancient India, turmeric was a superstar for skin. It was, and still is, widely used in face masks and pastes to brighten the complexion, reduce inflammation, and give the skin a healthy glow. Think of it as nature's original skin brightener and anti-inflammatory agent. Brides traditionally undergo a haldi ceremony, where a paste of turmeric is applied to their skin to ensure they glow on their wedding day. Then there's henna. We've seen henna used for hair in Egypt and China, but in India, it reached an artistic zenith with Mendi designs. These intricate, temporary tattoos, usually applied to the hands and feet, are not just beautiful. They're deeply symbolic, especially for weddings and festivals. The deep, rich stain left by the henna paste is seen as auspicious and beautiful. Beyond adornment, henna also has natural cooling properties, which would have been welcome in India's often hot climate. For the eyes, kajal, similar to kohl, was and still is widely used. Made from soot, clarified butter, ghee, and sometimes other herbs, it was applied to the waterline of the eyes, making them appear larger, brighter, and more defined. Beyond beauty, kajal was believed to protect the eyes from the sun's glare, dust, and even evil influences, much like kohl in ancient Egypt. It was common for both women and children to wear it. The use of oils was fundamental to ancient Indian beauty and health rituals. Various botanical oils, coconut, almond, sesame, and mustard were used extensively for skin and hair care. Regular oil massages, abhyanga, were, and still are, a core part of Ayurvedic practice, believed to nourish the skin, improve circulation, and calm the nervous system. These weren't just quick rubs. They were often elaborate, rhythmic massages designed to bring the body into balance. And when it came to hair, long, thick, lustrous locks were, and still are, highly prized. To achieve this, ancient Indians relied on a rich tradition of herbal hair care. Ingredients like neem, for scalp health, sandalwood for fragrance and cooling, amla, Indian gooseberry, rich in vitamin C, for hair strength, and shikakai, a natural cleanser, were combined into oils, masks, and washes. The goal wasn't just clean hair, but healthy, strong hair that reflected inner vitality. Fragrance was also important, often derived from natural sources. Sandalwood paste, jasmine oil, rose water, and various incense were used to perfume the body, clothes, and living spaces. These natural scents were not only pleasant but also believed to have calming or uplifting therapeutic properties. Even something as simple as a bindi, the dot worn on the forehead by women, has roots in ancient tradition, originally symbolizing spiritual energy, marital status, or auspiciousness, though its aesthetic appeal has grown over time. So, in ancient India, beauty was never separated from well-being. It was about nourishing the body, honoring traditions, and maintaining a harmonious balance that would naturally radiate outwards. From the golden glow of turmeric to the intricate art of Mendi and the therapeutic touch of oil massages, ancient Indian beauty rituals offer a holistic and deeply enriching perspective on what it means to truly adorn oneself, inside and out. It's a tradition that continues to flourish, proving the timeless wisdom of ancient practices. We've explored the beautiful and holistic world of ancient Indian adornment, where beauty radiated from a place of inner balance. Now, let's delve deeper into the medical side of that wisdom. Ayurveda, the science of life, and its incredible contributions to ancient healing. If you remember from our last chapter, Ayurveda is all about balance. Specifically, balancing the three dashas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. These are like unique mind-body types or energies that govern our physical and mental processes. When your dashas are in harmony, you're healthy. When they're out of whack, you get sick. So, Ayurvedic medicine isn't just about treating symptoms. It's about understanding the individual's unique constitution and restoring their specific balance. One of the most astonishing contributions from ancient India to medicine, and one that often surprises people, comes from a figure named Sushruta. He lived around 600 BCE, and he wrote the Sushruta Samhita, which is one of the earliest and most comprehensive texts on surgery in the entire world. This text describes over 300 different surgical procedures and more than 120 surgical instruments. Sushruta is often called the father of plastic surgery. Yes, you heard that right. Ancient India had a form of plastic surgery. The Sushruta Samhita describes in detail a procedure for rhinoplasty, or nose reconstruction. Noses were often disfigured in battles or as a form of punishment. Sushruta developed a technique where a flap of skin was taken from the cheek or forehead, shaped into a new nose, and then carefully sutured into place. This procedure is remarkably similar to techniques used even today. Imagine the skill and precision required without anesthesia as we know it, just herbs and sometimes alcohol to numb the pain. It's truly mind-boggling. Beyond surgery, Ayurvedic diagnosis was incredibly sophisticated. Like the Chinese, Ayurvedic doctors placed a huge emphasis on pulse diagnosis. By feeling the pulse at different points and noticing its rhythm, strength, and flow, they could gain deep insights into the patient's dasha imbalances and the state of their internal organs. They also meticulously examined urine, stool, eyes, and tongue, looking for clues to the body's internal state. They were master detectives of the human body. Dietary regimens were, and still are, central to Ayurvedic healing. Food was seen as medicine. A personalized diet, tailored to a person's specific dasha and their illness, was a primary treatment. For example, a person with too much pitta, fire energy, might be advised to eat cooling foods and avoid spicy ones. The emphasis was always on fresh, wholesome, seasonal foods. And let's talk about the unsung heroes of ancient Indian cuisine and medicine. Spices. Beyond just adding flavor, spices like ginger, turmeric, cumin, coriander, and black pepper were and are recognized for their powerful medicinal properties. Turmeric, as we discussed, is a potent anti-inflammatory. Ginger aids digestion. Cumin is good for detoxification. These weren't just tossed into meals randomly. Their therapeutic benefits were deeply understood and utilized in daily life and in specific remedies. But Ayurveda wasn't just about physical treatments. It embraced the whole person. Yoga and meditation were, and still are, integral therapeutic practices. Yoga postures, asanas, were used to strengthen the body, improve flexibility, and balance energy, while meditation was used to calm the mind, reduce stress, and promote mental well-being. The connection between mind and body was, and is, absolute. Herbal medicine was, of course, a huge component. The ancient texts described thousands of plants and their uses. They crafted complex herbal formulations, powders, oils, and concoctions, often after extensive experimentation and observation. Neem, triphala, a blend of 3 fruits, ashwagandha, brahmi. These are just a few of the many powerful herbs that have been used for centuries for their healing properties. So, ancient Indian medicine, with its roots in Ayurveda, offers a remarkably comprehensive and holistic approach to health. From pioneering plastic surgery and sophisticated diagnostic techniques to personalized diets, powerful herbal remedies, and the therapeutic practices of yoga and meditation, it's a testament to a civilization that viewed the body, mind, and spirit as an interconnected whole. It shows us that true healing often comes from restoring balance, a wisdom that continues to resonate powerfully today. All right, prepare for a bit of a shift in atmosphere as we leave the vibrant, holistic traditions of India and swing back west to medieval Europe. After the grandeur of Rome and the sophistication of earlier empires, the Middle Ages in Europe often get a bad rap for being dark and a bit less glamorous. And when it came to beauty rituals, things definitely took a different turn. The fall of the Roman Empire brought about a period of political upheaval, economic decline, and the rise of Christianity as the dominant religion. This had a huge impact on beauty standards. The overt display of wealth and sensuality that characterized Roman beauty was largely replaced by an emphasis on modesty, piety, and spiritual purity. For Christian women, humility and devotion were the primary virtues. This meant that elaborate makeup and revealing hairstyles were generally frowned upon. The ideal woman was often depicted with a serene, often solemn expression, with her hair covered and her skin pale. Think of the art from the period, lots of Madonnas and saints with untouched faces. So, the beauty routine of a medieval woman, especially a devout one, was usually much simpler and more discreet than her ancient Egyptian or Roman counterparts. Hair was often covered by veils, wimples, or elaborate head coverings, particularly for married women. Long, unbound hair was generally reserved for unmarried girls, or sometimes for noble women in private settings. But even then, it was often braided or styled modestly. The prized complexion was pale skin. This wasn't just a nod to modesty. It also indicated that you weren't a common laborer working in the fields under the sun. A suntan was a sign of a peasant. So, noble women would go to great lengths to protect their skin from the sun, often staying indoors or wearing wide-brimmed hats when outside. To achieve that ghostly pallor, they might use washes made from milk, egg whites, or even plant extracts. Unfortunately, sometimes they resorted to dangerous concoctions, including white lead, again, or arsenic-based powders, inherited from ancient practices. These would slowly poison them, leading to skin damage, hair loss, and worse. But the desire for that perfect pale skin was powerful. Cheeks and lips were usually left natural, though some subtle rouge made from madder root or berry juice might have been used in private, or by those in courtly circles who were a bit more daring. The goal was to look naturally flushed, not overtly painted. But it wasn't all austerity. In the later medieval period, particularly in courts and among the nobility, there was a resurgence of more elaborate beauty practices. Think of the ideals of courtly love and chivalry, where ladies were admired for their ethereal beauty. One rather odd beauty trend in the late Middle Ages was the obsession with a high forehead. Women would sometimes pluck their hairline far back, and even pluck out their eyebrows entirely to create a larger, more prominent forehead. This was thought to be a sign of intelligence and refinement. So, while today we might meticulously fill in our brows, medieval ladies were busy pulling them out. Hygiene, compared to Roman public baths, was a bit different. Public bathing declined in popularity due to various factors, including the spread of disease and changing social customs. However, people still bathed, usually in private, and used herbal waters and scented oils to cleanse and perfume themselves. Herbal washes and floral waters made from roses, lavender, or rosemary were popular for freshening the skin and masking body odors. Fragrance was still important. Instead of elaborate perfumes, simpler remedies like pomanders, fragrant balls of spices and herbs were carried or worn to ward off unpleasant smells and even believed to protect against disease. So, medieval European beauty was a complex blend of religious ideals, social status, and evolving fashion. While it might seem less flamboyant than other ancient eras, it reveals a fascinating period where modesty and piety influenced ideals, sometimes leading to subtle, elegant looks, and other times to rather strange and dangerous attempts to achieve a very specific standard of beauty, reminding us that even in an age of faith, vanity still found a way. Alright, we've covered the somewhat subdued beauty ideals of medieval Europe. Now, let's talk about what happened when those pale, high-forehead ladies and their knightly counterparts got sick. The medical landscape of the Middle Ages was a fascinating, often scary, and utterly unique blend of inherited knowledge, religious faith, folk wisdom, and sometimes sheer desperation. With the fall of the Roman Empire, a lot of the systematic medical knowledge of Greece and Rome was lost or scattered, especially in Western Europe. But it wasn't all dark ages for medicine. Much of the ancient wisdom was preserved and copied in monasteries, where monks diligently transcribed ancient texts, sometimes adding their own observations. These monasteries often had herb gardens and infirmaries, serving as centers of learning and healing. The dominant medical theory for pretty much the entire medieval period remained the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, inherited from Hippocrates and refined by Galen. Illness was still seen as an imbalance of these humors. So, if you had a fever, it might mean you had too much blood. If you were depressed, it could be an excess of black bile. And what was the go-to treatment for almost any humoral imbalance? You guessed it, bloodletting and leeches. These were everywhere. If you were sick, chances are a barber surgeon would be ready with his lancet to drain some blood, or a jar of hungry leeches. It was thought to cleanse the body of bad humors. While a small amount of bloodletting can sometimes relieve pressure, excessive bleeding often weakened already sick patients, making them more vulnerable. It was a classic example of a treatment doing more harm than good, but it was universally accepted. Surgery during this time was crude, to say the least. It was often performed by barber surgeons, who were literally barbers who also performed minor surgeries, pulled teeth, and, of course, bloodlet. They didn't have proper training, anesthesia, beyond perhaps a swig of alcohol, or any understanding of germs. Imagine having an amputation done with a saw that had just been used to cut hair, and then nothing to stop the screaming or the infection. Infections after surgery were almost a certainty and often deadly. Then there was the ultimate medical catastrophe, the Black Death. When the plague swept through Europe in the mid-14th century, it utterly decimated populations, killing millions. Doctors were utterly helpless. They tried everything: bloodletting, purging, strange concoctions, prayers, and wearing bizarre plague doctor masks filled with herbs to ward off miasma, bad air, believed to cause disease. Nothing worked. The scale of death was so immense that it shattered existing medical beliefs and spurred a desperate search for new explanations and treatments. Despite the challenges, herbalism flourished. People relied heavily on folk remedies, passed down through generations. Wise women or cunning folk often had extensive knowledge of local plants and their healing properties. Monastic gardens cultivated medicinal herbs, and scholarly works like herbals documented their uses. Things like chamomile for sleep, mint for digestion, willow bark containing salicylic acid, a precursor to aspirin, for pain, and countless other plants were used. While their effectiveness varied, many of these natural remedies had genuine therapeutic value. The influence of alchemy also began to creep into medicine. Alchemists weren't just trying to turn lead into gold. They were also searching for the elixir of life, a potion that could grant immortality or cure all diseases. This pursuit, while mystical, sometimes led to early chemical experiments and the distillation of substances, laying some very early groundwork for chemistry and pharmacology. They might have been looking for magic, but sometimes they stumbled upon science. So, medieval European medicine was a testament to human resilience in the face of widespread sickness and limited understanding. It was a period defined by the enduring and often harmful theory of the four humors, the brutal reality of bloodletting and crude surgery, and the devastating impact of plagues. Yet, amidst the superstition and suffering, knowledge was preserved, herbs were utilized, and the seeds of future medical advancements were slowly, painstakingly sown. It's a stark reminder of how far we've come and how hard our ancestors fought against the invisible enemies of disease. Wow, we've come a long way, haven't we? From the gilded temples of ancient Egypt to the monasteries of medieval Europe, from the bustling markets of Mesopotamia to the serene philosophical courts of China and the vibrant jungles of Mesoamerica. It's been a whirlwind tour of human vanity, desperation, ingenuity, and sometimes outright strangeness. What's really struck me throughout this journey is the sheer diversity of practices we've encountered. Think about it. In Egypt, we saw people outlining their eyes with kohl, not just for beauty, but for spiritual protection and even health benefits, believing it connected them to the divine. In Greece, it was all about the natural, athletic form, with olive oil as their go-to beauty secret and an early, rational approach to medicine. The Romans, with their love for opulence, embraced lead-based makeup and incredibly complex hairstyles, while also developing impressive public health systems. Ancient China brought us the quest for porcelain skin, intricate hair, and the incredibly painful tradition of foot binding, alongside the holistic wisdom of acupuncture and herbal medicine. Mesoamerican cultures reshaped skulls, inlaid teeth with jade, and used bloodletting as a sacred ritual, blending medicine and spirituality in a visceral way. And in India, Ayurveda taught us about balancing dashas, the revolutionary plastic surgery of Sushruta, and the power of turmeric and henna. Finally, medieval Europe, with its focus on piety, saw pale skin as the ideal and relied heavily on bloodletting and prayers amidst widespread illness. Each culture, shaped by its environment, beliefs, and available resources, developed its own unique blueprint for what constituted beautiful and healthy. There's no single ancient beauty standard or medical practice that applied to everyone. There's a riot of different ideas, materials, and beliefs. But here's the cool part. Despite all these differences, there are some incredibly powerful universal themes that connect all these ancient peoples to each other and to us. At the heart of it all is the timeless human desire for youth. Nobody, it seems, wanted to get old. Everyone wanted to defy wrinkles, gray hair, and the sagging effects of time. Fertility, Many beauty and health rituals were linked to ensuring fertility and healthy offspring, a crucial aspect of survival and legacy. Status, time and again, beauty rituals and even access to certain medical treatments were symbols of wealth, power, and social standing. That elaborate wig, that perfect pale skin, that skull shape, they all screamed, "I'm important." Health. Whether it was with leeches, acupuncture, or herbal poultices, the deep-seated fear of illness and the desperate hope for healing were always present. Perfection. This elusive idea, whether physical, spiritual, or a blend of both, drove so many of these practices. The pursuit of an ideal form, a harmonious body, a blemish-free face. What we also see across the board is a constant sense of experimentation. These ancient folks weren't just accepting their lot. They were trying things out. They observed, they learned, they mixed ingredients, they tried new surgical techniques, sometimes successfully, sometimes disastrously. It was a massive, ongoing trial and error process spanning millennia, driven by genuine curiosity and the pressing needs of life. And let's not forget the enormous role of belief. For many ancient cultures, the line between medicine, magic, and religion was incredibly blurry. Illness wasn't always just a physical problem. It was often a spiritual one, caused by angry gods, malevolent spirits, or karmic imbalance. So, a treatment might involve a botanical remedy, a surgical procedure, and a prayer or incantation. The mind and spirit were just as central to healing as the body. Finally, this global perspective also hints at the early globalization of ideas. As trade routes like the Silk Road developed, ingredients, knowledge, and even beauty trends started to travel. Spices from India made their way to Rome. Egyptian kohl might have inspired similar eye makeup in Mesopotamia. While societies remained distinct, there was a fascinating exchange of techniques and materials. So, as we reflect on this whirlwind tour, it becomes clear that the human quest for perfection, for beauty, for health, for a longer, better life is not a modern invention. It's a deep, ancient impulse that has manifested in countless extraordinary and often startling ways across the globe. It's a testament to our enduring spirit, our curiosity, and our sometimes hilarious and sometimes horrifying attempts to master our own bodies and fates. All right, we've basked in the glow of ancient beauty and admired the ingenuity of ancient healing. But let's be honest, not all ancient solutions were sunshine and roses. In fact, many were downright dangerous, and some came with terrifying unintended consequences. This chapter is where we pull back the curtain on the darker, more perilous side of humanity's quest for perfection. Let's start with the pursuit of beauty. We've touched on it a few times, but it bears repeating. Ancient people literally poisoned themselves for beauty. The desire for a fair complexion, for instance, led to widespread use of lead-based cosmetics in places like Rome and even ancient China. We're talking about white lead powder applied directly to the face, often for years. The results? Chronic lead poisoning. This wasn't just a minor rash. It caused skin lesions and disfigurement, the very thing they were trying to hide. Hair loss, stomach problems, nausea, and intense pain. Neurological damage leading to tremors, paralysis, and cognitive decline, infertility and stillbirths, and ultimately a slow, agonizing death. Imagine wanting to look good so badly that you essentially put a slow-acting poison on your face every day. It's a stark reminder of the immense pressure beauty standards can exert. And it wasn't just lead. Mercury-based compounds, often used for skin lightening or treating blemishes, were also highly toxic. Cinnabar, used for blush in Rome, contains mercury sulfide. Mercury poisoning could lead to kidney failure, neurological damage, and severe mental illness. Talk about a bad makeup day. Then there's arsenic. In some periods, particularly in the later centuries, though influenced by ancient ideas, arsenic wafers were consumed by women who believed it would give them a bright, clear complexion and sparkling eyes. A small dose might have temporary stimulating effects, but arsenic is a potent poison, leading to long-term health issues and eventually, death. It seems some people literally ate poison to look pretty. Beyond cosmetics, other beauty rituals involved extreme pain and permanent harm. Foot binding in China, as we discussed, was a devastating practice that led to lifelong disability, excruciating pain, and a severely deformed foot. This wasn't just a temporary fashion. It was a permanent sacrifice for a specific ideal of beauty and marriageability. The cost was immense. Now, let's switch to medicine. While ancient doctors had moments of brilliant insight, many of their treatments were based on misconceptions and ignorance about how the body actually worked. The four humors theory, despite its long reign, was fundamentally incorrect. This led to practices like excessive bloodletting, which often weakened already sick patients and made them more susceptible to infection, rather than helping them. It's easy to look back and scoff, but these were the best theories they had at the time. Surgery without anesthesia or sanitation was a gamble of epic proportions. Trepanation, drilling holes in the skull, amputations, or setting complex fractures might have been life-saving in some cases, but without sterile instruments or germ theory, the risk of fatal infection was astronomically high. Imagine undergoing one of these procedures, fully conscious, enduring unimaginable pain, only to succumb to an infection days later. And many of the strange remedies we've chuckled at were likely ineffective or worse. Crocodile dung contraceptives, gladiator's blood for epilepsy, urine mouthwash, while some might have offered placebo effects or mild antiseptic properties, like ammonia in urine, many were based on sympathetic magic or desperate hope rather than any real scientific understanding. Administering these to a sick person might have delayed them from seeking genuinely helpful remedies, or even caused further harm. These dangerous practices highlight a critical difference between ancient and modern approaches, ethical considerations, and patient safety. Today, medical research goes through rigorous testing, and beauty products are regulated. Mostly, ancient practitioners, for all their good intentions, operated without the safety net, often learning by trial and error, with patients sometimes paying the ultimate price. So, while we marvel at the ingenuity and exotic nature of ancient beauty and medical rituals, it's crucial to acknowledge their dark side. The pursuit of perfection, without scientific understanding, often led to profound suffering and death. It's a sobering reminder of the very real risks people faced in their enduring quest for health and beauty, and how far we've come in understanding the true science of our bodies. And so, here we are, at the end of our journey through ancient beauty rituals and bizarre medical treatments. We've seen the extremes, the brilliance, and sometimes the outright strangeness of human efforts to look good and feel better. But the big question now is, what does all this dusty history have to do with us, sitting here in our modern world? Turns out, quite a lot. The echoes of the past are all around us, often in surprising places. Think about some of those ancient ingredients we discussed. Aloe vera from Egypt, still a go-to for soothing skin and minor burns today. Honey as an antiseptic wound dressing? Modern medicine has rediscovered its power and uses medical-grade honey. Olive oil from Greece, still a Mediterranean diet staple and a natural moisturizer. Turmeric from India, a superfood spice, an anti-inflammatory, and a popular ingredient in modern skincare. Essential oils and plant extracts from almost every ancient culture, the basis of modern aromatherapy and a huge chunk of the natural beauty industry. Acupuncture from China, now recognized and practiced in clinics worldwide for pain management and various conditions. It's truly fascinating to see how some of these ancient practices, once dismissed as folk remedies, have been validated by modern science. It's like our ancestors were onto something, even if they didn't have the fancy lab equipment to prove why it worked. They relied on observation, tradition, and often sheer luck. But beyond the specific ingredients and techniques, it's the underlying human psychology that truly connects us to our ancient ancestors. The desire for youth, vitality, and beauty is hardwired into us. We might not be slathering on lead-based makeup, thankfully, but we're spending billions on anti-aging creams, cosmetic procedures, and aesthetic treatments. The methods have evolved dramatically, from painful foot binding to laser hair removal, from toxic skin whiteners to advanced dermatology. But the core aspirations are eerily similar. We still want to defy time, to enhance our features, to feel confident in our appearance. And the quest for health? That's even more profound. We've moved from the four humors to microbiology, from leeches to antibiotics, from ancient surgical tools to robotic precision. The evolution of science has been monumental, transforming medicine from often being based on guesswork and superstition to being evidence-based and incredibly effective. We no longer have to fear a toothache turning deadly or a simple cut leading to a fatal infection. Most of the time, we have vaccines, advanced diagnostics, and complex surgeries that would have seemed like pure magic to our ancient counterparts. Yet, even with all our scientific prowess, the fundamental human fear of illness and death remains. We're still searching for cures for diseases, battling new pandemics, and striving to live longer, healthier lives. The basic human impulse to alleviate suffering and preserve life is as strong today as it was when the first Egyptian physician mixed a herbal poultice. This journey also makes us appreciate the amazing progress we've made. We can look back at the dangerous allure of lead cosmetics or the agony of foot binding and be grateful for modern regulations and scientific understanding. We can shake our heads at gladiators' blood as a cure, while simultaneously marveling at the genius of Sushruta's ancient plastic surgery. In the end, our ancestors were just like us, flawed, ingenious, superstitious, scientific, vain, and vulnerable. They tried their best with the knowledge they had, experimenting, hoping, and sometimes stumbling upon brilliance. Their strange rituals and bizarre treatments are not just curiosities. They are a profound testament to the resilience and ingenuity of the human spirit. And now, as the last whispers of ancient empires and distant rituals fade into the quiet of the night, it's time for you to drift off. Let go of the lead makeup, the leeches, and the elaborate wigs. Close your eyes, let your breath grow soft and even, and allow the stories of the past to become part of your peaceful dreams. May your sleep be deep, your rest be restorative, and your mind be filled with gentle tranquility. Sweet dreams.